Hello, could you introduce yourself for me, please?
Sure. My name is Grove Harris. I live in Barnstable, Massachusetts, near the ocean. And I am here representing the Temple of Understanding, which is an interfaith organization, one of the oldest in the world and one of the only ones started by a woman. But the opinions I express here will be my own.
I'm curious if you could tell me your perspective on why you think a constitution or a group such as the Women's Caucus matters in these conventions. For some people, there is still no link between gender and nature, like it has nothing to do with one another.
I think that the violence against women and the violence against nature are so linked that it would be silly for people to refute the idea that the healing of both is also linked. And I think that these caucuses are inclusive spaces where there's minimal administration, there's minimal financing, and there's maximal inclusivity. And I feel that that is really important for people because people need to feel included and to be at the table. There's a phrase that I learned from Oren Lyons. He said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And we need to create everywhere inclusive tables so that we enable the brilliance of the diversity and of the diverse realities to lead us in real ways rather than artificial heads up, same old, let's do something again, even though it didn't work. So we need to be really inviting that kind of diversity. And at the same time, it allows people to relax. Because, for example, I didn't organize this day. I had the privilege of simply arriving. And that is lovely for me and important because it doesn't take everybody working at everything. We need to have our lives and to be showing the joy of being on this planet and enjoying the beauty of nature and doing the caring work of ourselves and our families so that we're actually walking our talk, not overworking constantly, because that's silly. We have to enjoy our journey, and that gives us a kind of resilience.
Sweet. So today was the part one of the Women's Forum organized by the Women's Caucus, the Government of Colombia. I'm curious if you could share some reflections with me, maybe some highlights. And I'm curious, I know you will, but if you could share from your mind and from your heart.
Sure. I was here most of the day, except for a lunch break and a few other amazing connections with different women, because part of what one has to do here is be open to the synchronicities and the international connections and the sharing, resource sharing, connecting to larger networks. That is a lot of what this is about. So this event, what I saw was a unity of a vast number of political figures at the beginning, and that unity is something that I hope is very powerful. It feels a little performative, listening to government officials make speeches, but they were clear that this is about action, this is about coming together, it's about moving forward on an agenda, and people in the audience were applauding that. It was a little less interactive because we ended up with less time, which is unfortunate. But it was a session that brought women and the opinions from the green zone into the blue zone. And the table that was set was huge. The venue was large. It had the respect that this kind of gathering deserves. So I found that a number of the speakers had really concrete ideas about what needs to happen in the negotiations, where land tenure rights are being discussed, where women's inclusion needs to be kept in rather than bracketed. So there was a lot of important technical work in that sense. it was also really important to hear from the women who are risking their lives to defend their lands and to defend their human rights, and to hear them loud and clear say how important their participation in this venue is and how important it is that we find ways to shift resources, not just to the governmental entities, not just to the larger NGOs that attempt to serve, but actually that we find ways to actually get the funding to the frontline human rights defenders. They need to be able to carry on their work on behalf of biodiversity and all of us and the entire planet. So for me, that's a focal point, and a really clear action step. How do we simplify and get the money where it needs to be? And I think that we need to be providing some of those answers, because the other answers that I heard today was create national gender focal points, and then they can talk with each others and they can create enabling conditions, because the United Nations cannot make things happen, but they can create enabling conditions, just to use more of the language. And in some regards, they also can be hopeful that a lot of countries have not finished their action plans yet. And that can be seen as an opportunity to get the gender language in there. And also the understanding that the focus on gender is about a parity. It's about making sure that women's contributions are maximized, but it does not take men off the hook from their own caring efforts and from their necessity to be involved in ending violence against women, in opening their hearts in the ways that they parent, and in being caregivers for our earth. This is a time to really come together, and it is not just on women's shoulders by any means.
Beautiful. Something else you want to share?
I wanted to share that my work is interfaith, which partly means it goes to moral values that are common to all faiths. It's not intended to be a lowest common denominator, but it is intentionally completely inclusive, so that someone who is an atheist is welcome, someone who is a humanist is welcome, and of course all of the world's major traditions, minor traditions, and indigenous peoples in all their diversities, who the spirituality is so embedded in their lives that they might not call it a religion. And the word religion means what you are tied to. And my personal religion is profoundly eco-feminist. And when people started talking about this image of women having wings, and that is what the resources are for, it's to enable women to fly, to lift up out of some of their difficulties and soar in ways that will benefit us all.
Thank you so much.